Okay. Well, the other two will be able to look at it then.
Mm-hmm.
And you happy to write some notes on Google Docs, Mike?
I will get it. I will call that up.
Mm-hmm.
I've been having various conversations since last week, beginning to think about recruiting presenters. And having seen that webinar yesterday from Exeter, I really am very encouraged that I think we can make it work quite well. I know people have been saying, oh, it's very easy, but it's better when you experience it yourself. Had a very good discussion. So at Edinburgh, at the conference last year, I ran a session in which 7 or 8 people presented their qualitative grids in a workshop. So I wrote to all those people, and because I think Yelena said last week that something on the PEG, the perceiver element grid, would be welcome. So I've emailed them, and I've had replies from 3 of them saying they'd be very happy to do something. And Nadia Nafi, who's done some very interesting work on Syrian refugees in Canada and young people's prejudices and perceptions of those refugees, again using PEGs and other tools. She would be very happy to present as well. So we're beginning to accumulate a list of people that could do some of these things, which is pleasing. I think I mentioned last time also that Peter Cummins would be pleased to run some kind of book or article club. What do people think about that? Is that something that we should allow to come on board?
Why not?
That sounds like an interesting thing to have, yes.
Absolutely.
So it'd be a bit like a book club where you read an article and discuss it.
That would be really useful if a range of people can access that then, because it becomes a really good teaching tool too.
Yeah. So that sort of that completes my list of stuff that I've done since last time, I think. Oh, another one, Joanne Robinson. Do you know Joanne, anyone?
I think I do.
She's clinical psychologist in Leeds. And she's been doing some work with her team building exercises, and she would also be happy to present something. So I think if we can make a list of presenters, and I hope that you'll be able to think of people too, if or present yourselves.
Sure.
And then we'll put it in some kind of logical order. Does that sound good?
What format are you thinking of using? Sorry, I'm a bit out of the loop because I haven't been in.
Yeah.
What format are you thinking of using?
Have you seen Mike's document that Mike started writing a document to cover this? And
right, okay, yeah.
In that, I think it was a 2-hour sort of half-hour presentation, discussion, breakout groups, and then final discussion.
All right. So that
but
would
I mean, that could be
that the central format then, or is that one of the proposed formats?
I think we're still negotiating, aren't we, and discussing.
Right. Okay.
That seems about right
really,
to me.
as to where the conversation's gone. Yeah.
I think going longer than 2 hours would probably be too much for people's busy lives. It's also very tiring.
It's very tiring, yeah.
How's your leg, by the way, Sandy?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the mend. That's such a stupid thing to do, really.
Yeah.
No, I'm all right. I've got to the stage of hobbling, so I'm all right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Not
So-
nearly as exciting as Chiara.
Lewis and Mike, do you feel that you'd find local people willing to do something?
Yes, yes. I don't recall what dates are we talking about. Did we? Did we mention some date?
No, we haven't got that far yet.
Okay,
It would happen at intervals, I guess.
okay.
Say
I think-
fortnightly.
Yeah, I think I can recruit some local people to do something along these lines.
Great.
You know, okay, I'll wait till you get back, Harry.
Okay, I'm not going far away.
Mhm.
It strikes me that it might be helpful to talk about how many of these we want to have,
Mhm.
because the way we've been talking about it is that we're talking about one presentation in a 2-hour period in a day. So that's just
Not
one.
necessarily only one.
That's what I was thinking. But that's what I was thinking. So it's now clear that that's not what you're thinking. So okay, so good. There we go. So you were
Well,
thinking of
maybe,
having multiple ones in a day. I was thinking of them being short. I'm not at all wedded to that. I'm just saying that's what I was thinking.
yeah. No, I'm very flexible about
Ah.
it. No.
So you're thinking of multiple ones in a day.
No, I don't think so. But maybe if 2 or 3 people were talking about the same topic, that would be quite a nice thing to compare their work and discuss that.
Mhm.
Well, the proposal that I wrote has, one person and then discussion, dot, 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 dot.
Yeah.
So under what you're saying, that could be modified to be a panel.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And
Well,
so that's
if you're looking at students' research projects, often they present for about 20 minutes, don't they? So they usually brief and.
Mhm.
yeah, we may be having different concepts here. Again, and I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But what I wrote, just a matter of a working document, so that we can be clear, was springboard. I think off of what Sandy had talked about when she talked about the TED idea.
Mhm.
So that there'd be like a 20-30 minute thing, and so the whole thing for one person would take like what you said, 2 hours. So if that's what's on the table, I suggest that we attack it and change it according to the way that people would like to have that changed.
Mhm.
But isn't it best to define it in the document with flexibility so that people can
Yes.
each time choose what they want?
Yes.
I like that idea, being able to choose the formats you want to present in.
So
Yes.
so what types of formats might there be? So we can modify it.
So we've mentioned panel discussions, a
Mhm.
presentation and then a discussion. We've got student research type presentations. We'd have to format some kind of discussion around that if they wanted that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, oh,
We also
definitely.
have multiple research presentations by students in one. I mean, that could be 3
Yes.
students in an hour. So they would need feedback then, so we'd have to have some sort of system for feedback. Would we put a discussion around a paper into something like this? Or is that a different place?
I think the book club idea is slightly different. Again, could talk further with Peter about it. I mean, I've said to Peter that I would discuss it with this group before bringing him on board. I don't know if you'd want him, I doubt if he'd want to be part of this group, but maybe he could come and discuss it on one occasion.
An idea that I did cross my mind a while back is what would be like to have a pre-paper discussed in a sort of more public way than, writing into somebody. would it be interesting to have somebody present a pre-paper and then have people who have specific areas of knowledge, that almost like a goldfish bowl approach, really, where you're actually listening to people thinking through academically about somebody else's work before it's published.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Mike, I missed that.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, you mean something written?
Yes, written, and then when people put up a pre-paper and then
What do you mean by a
much
pre-paper?
like Mike's just done, and have people write in. I just think it would be really interesting, purely from a constructivist point of view, to watch somebody developing ideas like that, and to actually be able to see, especially for students, to be able to see people doing that for real.
When you say pre-paper, do you mean sort of helping somebody to write an article in the process?
When you've written a basic article, you put it up, and then you ask for input from and commentary. To have that on a possibly both written and as a discussion situation, it would be, and it's so helpful to have lots of people come in and talk to you about your work before you actually write it. It's a bit like a seminar, I suppose, but a seminar with people who know what they're talking about rather than students.
Leaves me out. Harry, would you be so kind as to allow me to share my screens, just so that I just think, unless people don't want it, I just want to put what I'm writing on the board so that people can see it.
Yeah, it'd be helpful, yes.
Do I have to do something?
You have to make me co-host.
Okay. Is that in participants? How do I do that?
I think the only way I can help you is to suggest that you scroll through the bottom and see one of those will come up and say share screen in some way.
Oh, share screen. Is that all you need?
Yeah. If you hit share screen, it'll share your screen. But maybe there's something on the share screen menu that will allow you to share to share the host with me. You'd have to look at the bottom and see.
There's a little arrow. One participants can share at a time. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Advanced sharing options. Yes, there's something about hosts here. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Is that it?
Should
we do that? We can make that work.
Or who can share? Only the host, all participants.
Participants.
Should I put all?
Yeah.
Sure.
Does that make any difference?
Yep, we're all set. You did it. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Ah, lovely. There we go. That's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you putting this onto the previous document, or?
Yes, it's on the same one.
Okay.
Because I think we've got two documents going, haven't we?
We may, but I don't know where the other one is.
One's called European something, and one's called PCP Zoom or something. And we started putting minutes on the. I think I changed that since last time, and so we've got one document for minutes and one for.
I don't know where that is. My suggestion would be that we do it this way for now, just for timing reasons.
Yeah, sure. We'll sort it out later.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question? The whole idea of reinvention, is there a quick potted history you can give me of the discussion about that?
I can.
Yep.
I had somebody had said that, and I had talked about the idea that reinvention in the time of COVID would be a good theme, broad theme. Harry took that to mean that all we were going to do is talking about COVID, and he struck it down and spat at me and never had the light of day.
As he does, yes.
Yeah, he does that a lot.
He does that, yes, we know this.
So I think that if I recall what Harry said, that he was suggesting that a reinvention in the time of COVID theme would be like a possible thing that could be done as part of a paper, but from his point of view, you could probably speak for yourself. From his point of view, he said,
I think I was just saying it didn't seem right to make it a rationale for the whole project, that it's just one of the topics that we could discuss. And since seeing Sabrina's thing, I thought it was extremely useful. Incidentally, it's recorded, that thing that she did. So at some point, hopefully we could get access to it.
If we don't find it, yeah, that would be really helpful. Be good to listen to. Right. So in terms of the reinvention, then, how big a reinvention are you looking for, Harry?
Well, I'm not quite up to speed on what you mean by reinvention. I'm sorry, I'm a bit thick. I am getting quite old.
Yeah, but your thickness is nothing, my friend. What I was, for me, the reinvention was, here we are at COVID. It wasn't about COVID. It was about how, what do we need to do as a society, as organizations, as individuals,
okay,
to respond to this. And given that constructivism is about inventing and reinventing, what I see as one of the primary problems that we are facing is a desire to kind of go back to normal.
Yeah.
And not see that this beast is there in front of us, and we need to adapt to it, therefore reinvent and reflect upon central core beliefs that no longer are going to work.
Yeah.
That was the thrust of where I was going.
Okay, yeah.
Nice.
And that's sort of what I was hoping you were talking about, really, because I would be very interested to actually look at some of that, just in terms of the actual processes that are happening in people's minds on an individual basis and on a group basis. I've spent the last couple of weeks kind of trawling through the internet, if you like, looking at the shape of processes that people have put in place in response to COVID. So things like the community-based social responses, the shopping and fetching people some medication and all that's happening in England. And also looking through the special education network responses, because a lot of children who were not at school, purely due to the fact that they had school avoidance or school phobia, have now become mainstream children because nobody's at school, and the struggle that parents have been experiencing as educators at home with their children who are avoidant is now the mainstream experience of all parents whose children are actually avoidant. And so there's this, I'm really, just purely because I'm being bored to tears, really, the experience of people shifting from being the outliers and the people with the difficulties to being the people that everybody else is turning to, saying, well, how do you do this? How do you do home education? How do you cope with children on the autistic spectrum at home when they won't go out?
Yeah.
I think that's actually a very powerful process that's happening. And I mean, it would be wonderful if it actually informed educational policy or mental health policy, etc., around the world, but it's not going to. But it would be interesting if we could capture that somehow, or at least mention it somewhere.
Well, Sandy, I know of somebody who'd like to pursue that theme, perhaps even with you at some point.
I would be up for that. I really would, because I'm intrigued as much as anything about the fact that what people consider to be a difficulty or a problem suddenly becomes a coping strategy, as opposed to the other way around, where coping strategies become problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, it opens a viewpoint for so many people. It gives them such a better understanding, first of all, of where people are coming from, but also it forces people to confront their own prejudices as well. And to understand that coping strategies are just that, they are coping strategies, and it's not right or wrong, it just is. I mean, there's so many thoughts I've had. I've sort of scribbled down a whole list of them, but I would be interested in pursuing that with somebody, if you'd be interested.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how yet, but certainly worth more of a
Who are you
conversation.
talking about, Mike, that might do that?
One of the four of us, the guy with the beard.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting watching somebody else type.
Yeah. It's a bit hypnotic. I mean, obviously, I'm happy to help and participate in discussions, but I don't feel that it's something that I'm kind of qualified to take a lead role in with you, Sandy.
I'm also looking at it from a student point of view, because I've got an 18-year-old who's supposed to be going to university in September and probably isn't now. So, you know, there is a whole shift in the education system in general, which I'd be really interested in, not so much mapping, but at least starting to look at or collate, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a potential theme.
Mm-hmm. Sandy, I think when we spoke after the first meeting on the phone,
yeah,
you had quite a lot of thoughts about constructivism and personal construct theory itself and the need to critique it. I think you were saying that, I can't remember exactly the words you used, but you were certainly critiquing it to be rather inward looking, I think. Was that right? And
yeah, it's bothered me for a while. Sorry, I keep moving because I'm trying to get rid of the sun. That's better. We're in a process of change, I think is what I said to you. And we're in a process of having to reconstrue our own experiences. And I think that personal construct theory specifically, but also just general constructivism, has such a lot to offer in this process. Because essentially it is the core, and it's the core of this. It explains. So I'm just going to shut the door.
I think the dog was listening.
Sorry, I have an incredibly loud miniature dachshund. Yeah, what I was thinking was, we need to get it out there. We need to be able to help people to frame their thinking in a way, and this is such a powerful tool for doing that, but it's not nearly well known enough, and it's not done. What I found it interesting, I've been doing the same sort of work for the last 17 years, and I've developed a system for doing social communication with children who are neurodiverse. And the experience I've had has been really interesting, because my entire 30 years plus of work has been moving towards this point. And everything I've done, and all the reading I've ever done, and all the studying and everything else, has got me to this point. And looking back, I can track it. And I found it really interesting in that I've gone through lots of different people's disciplines and lots of different academic fields to get to the point that I'm in. And constructivism has been at the core of my thinking the entire time.
Yeah.
And now that I'm looking for references to back up what I was saying in 1986, the research that is coming out now is, especially in the neurological fields, it backs up all the constructivist principles that have been spoken about for so long. And so there are people in neurosciences, for instance, who are now coming to this and going, oh my God, people have been talking about this for 30 years and we never knew. And I think that's something that really interests me, is the idea that you know, there's this body of knowledge that some people have known about and have worked with, but other disciplines have sort of reinvented the wheel. And actually, we could save everybody so much time if we could just get it out there so that lots of disciplines were talking with the same sort of language. Does that make sense?
It does. Is it what they call neuroconstructivism, Sandy?
Pardon?
Is it what they call neuroconstructivism?
Yes, I think that would be a very good term.
Yeah.
But it's not just in neurology. It's education. It crosses so many different fields. And people start to say something, and you think, well, yeah, that's constructivism, and then they don't know that.
Yeah.
And you think there's this whole body that would just inform and bring lots of fields together, and you'd get so much cross-discipline fertilization if we could harness this as a kind of a central tool for communication. Sorry, I'm ranting at you. I'll stop.
No, it's all. I'm very much with the spirit.
That's what I think is what Harry and I were talking about.
I
ranted at him then.
After we discussed it, I've got a box full of more general constructivism and constructionism articles. And I remember that there were a couple on neuro, the interface with neuro, but they were I was going to send them to you, but they're incredibly out of date.
Well, I'm just reading the modern, literally, the sort of 2017 plus neuro stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are getting incredibly excited about something that's been around since 1955. And you think, why didn't you know?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I will stop ranting. It's just like,
no, I mean,
this whole thing of connecting fields is where I come from, really.
Yeah.
Because I've stood on everybody's toes for 30 years.
Thank you for your rant. I liked it a lot. Are you familiar with the Mind, Brain, and Education Society? Mind, Brain, and Education Society?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I've heard of it. Yeah.
It just seems like something that would be tailor-made for you. That's all.
Yes, it is pretty much.
Fine.
Is there somebody in that movement that you've related to or could, or that would be likely to be?
I should certainly go and have a look.
Yeah.
And come back to you about that.
What makes you mention it, Mike?
Because Mind, Brain, and Education, well, Kurt Fisher was the guy who created that, and he was a person I worked with until he just very recently died. And it brings together constructivism, brain, and education. So it just seemed like it could have been just, you know, sandy.com rather than mindbraineducation.com. So that's all. And there are many, many, many people in that movement, and many people.
Yeah, and those are the people we want to kind of connect with, really. Not just in the education, but people like that across fields.
Yes.
It
I think that'd be incredibly reinvigorating, if nothing else.
Needs a bit of a strategy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
An accumulation of the most relevant literature.
Well,
and maybe a presentation by a certain speech and language therapist who lives in Somerset.
I'd be up for that. I just need to work out what to present.
Did you know that Lewis had written a paper called PCP at the Vanguard of Postmodernism, wasn't it, Lewis?
Yeah,
Which I think is a key paper. Was it 1995?
95, yes.
Ah,
It's something that you should have a look at, Sandy.
I definitely will.
I
Could you
will,
Can you send it to me, Lewis?
sure, yes, I will send
Thank
you.
you very much. That would be
You're
great.
more than welcome.
Be
Are
fine.
you aware of, I mean, if you were to update that paper,
Hmm.
are you aware of key literature that would be good to supplement it with?
I will need to think about it. Well, probably many things about narrative therapy, for instance, that was not that elaborated at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and other so-called postmodern therapies, constructionism as well, of course.
There's a lot of movement in play therapy, for instance,
Play
and trauma
therapy.
therapy.
Yes, yes,
Would fit in there as well.
absolutely.
Sorry, you've been landed a job, I think.
I mean, the original thought that I had was that we would have groups, not just single people presenting, but that
Yes.
groups of people would come together and design input.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like working parties, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
World's our oyster, really, isn't it? I mean, there's so many things that we can cover.
Mm-hmm.
Harry, are you talking about groups in terms of formats, as possible formats?
Well,
or
I'm
are you
thinking at
talking
the
about
moment,
having working parties to develop themes or,
if you take the last
ideas?
10 minutes, if you take the last 10 minutes of the discussion about neuroconstructivism, let's call it, we've stopped being an organizing committee. We've become one of those groups for a minute. See what I mean?
Yeah.
But if this committee was to take on every topic, we'd be totally overwhelmed.
Oh, no, we can't do
So we
that,
need
no.
to use this group to either single members of it to organize and promote those subgroup discussions, if you like, or identifying people that would have an interest in doing that.
Would anybody object if I talk to Jean Desity? He's an emeritus professor of neuro, but he's very interested in this sort of field. And
Where's he based?
I'm in conversation with him at the moment about the work I'm doing, and I was wondering if it might be interested in maybe presenting, if nothing else. Nobody dislikes him intensely or knows him for something else.
I don't know. I don't know him.
Okay.
Where's he based?
I thought I'd ask because I don't know anybody. So I know most people's names on sheets of paper, so I don't want to go in there.
Who is the person you nominated?
Jean Desity, Decety. You're Googling him.
No, I don't.
How do you spell Jean? How do you spell Jean?
He and somebody, Jackson, developed the oh god, what is the thing called? The something architecture of empathy. But I can't remember the term. But he's a very, very interesting man, and he's very interested in these sorts of areas. The functional architecture of empathy, that's what it was called. It's a model a while back. But you know, his conversation is much around this sort of thing as well, and it would be interesting to see if he'd be prepared to present, for instance. Okay, I will talk to him.
I don't object. I just want to raise an issue. I think I know his work, and I could be wrong, but I think it may be in some sense anti-constructivist. I could be wrong, which is not a bad thing. I just want us to be aware of that.
In what way do you think he's anti-constructivist?
I think I shouldn't speak because I may be getting him confused with someone. I thought that there was some nativist stuff there. I can't remember. I could be entirely.
I haven't come across anything like that, I have to
I'm
say, in what I've been reading from him.
I'm going to shut up.
I'll have a look. I'll check before I ask him.
Okay.
But if he is, that's fine too. I mean, just a different
Well,
theme.
yes, there's no reason why you can't have different voices.
That's right.
Nothing else to change his mind.
Sure.
Does go both ways.
Yeah.
I will check though. Point taken.
What would the anti-constructivism be around, Mike?
I don't remember. I shouldn't have said anything. It's just a thought I had. I have to look before I speak.
I will certainly have a look.
What's next? What should be our next thing? It seems to me that we're moving in a very clear direction. I almost feel like what I want to do is to go back to the original missive and restructure it around this idea of the formats and to solicit themes, and then to begin to hone that in amongst us, and then perhaps send it out for interest groups, something like that. Are we in that phase?
Certainly at some point we need to disseminate to the community in as broad a way as we can to get people's reaction, and hopefully to recruit some people who are willing to
You think we're getting
put
close
some
to
energy
that?
into it.
Things to talk about?
Sorry?
You think we're getting close to that, or are there other issues to talk about before we get there?
I think we're getting closer. I don't think we're quite there, but definitely closer.
I think so.
I mean, I think we ought to trial it. And I wrote to Nadia Nafi, who's in Montreal, in Ottawa, Quebec. Very energetic person, hugely resourceful. And I just wrote to her on Facebook, just messages, and can't remember whether I actually said it to her, but the idea I have is that we could use her as a person to present, to test the system, if you like. And learn from what happens. Again, I was waiting for this meeting to get your formal approval before moving forward.
Okay. Who was she, Harry?
Nadia Nafi. She's actually Lebanese, and I think she probably left Lebanon, under duress. So she's now in Canada, and she was working at Concordia University with Anne-Louise Davidson, and they co-ran the Montreal conference 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago. And they're great, the two of them. They're, hugely enthusiastic. And she presented at the Galcignano conference in Italy. Incidentally, my Zoom system only gives us 40 minutes because it's not paid for. And I'm aware that we've probably gone over that. And last time this happened, they said you can carry on.
That happened. That message was already
Oh,
stated.
really? I didn't notice
Hmm.
it. I was too
Yes.
busy looking at the faces in the corner. Yeah, Nafi, she's called Nafi after Nadia. She's fluent in French and English and Arabic. Yeah,
Okay.
put Nadia Nafi so we
Hmm.
know.
Who would this test run be with and for?
Well, for anyone, if we advertise it, for anyone who would come on board. I haven't elaborated it much beyond that at the moment.
Are you thinking of her presenting a paper or something and then
Yeah.
having a
Uh-huh.
trial run with a sort of post-paper discussion or something like that?
Yeah.
I have to admit, Harry, I don't see the need for it.
Okay.
I'm open to it.
Just put her on the list, you mean?
I think that to do such a thing would be almost tantamount to, having your first talk. And I don't know if we'd get as much, we get a lot of bang for the buck. I imagine that our first session will have some errors in it, but I
Yeah.
don't think that those errors are going to be, my prediction would be that those errors wouldn't be so bad, and that we could probably test run this in a mock way rather than in a. I want to keep her for the main event, something like that.
Yes. Yeah. You're right.
Mhm.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because the original proposal was to get Viv Burr on board, wasn't it, as a presenter? And I was arguing exactly the same thing. That she's professor of social psychology in Huddersfield.
Mhm.
So I was thinking of her as somebody that I wouldn't want to expose an error-prone system to. And
Can I make a suggestion?
please.
How would it be if we did a test run with this, with somebody like that, but with students? So that we tried each one of our formats, but with a student body. So it could become part of somebody's lecture series or whatever, but at the same time, it's not something that then becomes hugely public. We can then keep or discard any of that because it's test run. If something really useful comes out of it, it can become part of our core library or whatever we put together. But at the same time, we're working with people who would benefit from it because it's still discussion and information that would be going into their learning.
I think it's a lovely idea.
I agree.
How about, as far as I know, you two other guys, Lewis and Mike, are people who have a student body.
Mm-hmm.
Would that idea be applicable?
Would you lend us your students?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. No problem.
It would be nice to have the two languages as well, I think.
I can do that.
I
Excellent.
like the idea.
Could you use your Merrimack students?
No, it's not appropriate. Again, I like the idea. I think we just need one test run. I just don't see.
I'm just thinking from a practical point of view, literally setting up the different formats. That if we were to run each of those formats, so a TED Talk format, a panel discussion, student presentation, pre-paper discussion.
To me.
See what I mean?
It'll take forever. In my opinion, it'll take forever. You gotta. It's gonna take 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the idea. I love the idea. I just think we should do it once.
Well, maybe we should do each of them and present them to the students and ask them to give us their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That might work.
I think we're worrying too much about the failure of the technology.
Yeah, we probably are.
It
I
isn't the technology I'm worried about. It's just more the politics of the community.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Well, I suppose if my worst fear is that we go to a lot of effort and put some stuff together and there isn't much interest.
How
Oh.
will testing it out get us more interest?
Sorry?
How would testing it out give us more interest?
Well, it's part of the purpose of the test is to see how much interest there is.
I would suggest doing a kick-ass thing and making it so wonderful that it can't not have interest. Would be my thing. Listen, people.
I'm not doubting the quality of our potential stuff. It's just more a thought that, you know, virus is going on, people are incredibly busy, and there's a lot of this sort of stuff floating around. Maybe just at that level, you know, that we may not get the interest base that we'd hoped for.
Unless we're involving people from allied isms, because then
That
you've
would
got a
help.
much wider audience.
But the other thing is, you know, I'm seeing this as an ongoing thing. And there's a difference between putting one event on and getting a good response. I mean, Sabrina put something on COVID and she got 30 people. But what we're after is ongoing involvement of a group, quite a large group of people,
Okay, can we
over quite many months, let's say.
Can we talk about that? Because what do you mean by ongoing? Do you mean ongoing in perpetuity, ongoing in over a couple of months? What do you mean?
Well, we're not doing all this just for a couple of months, are we?
I didn't know that. Okay, good.
I would say over some months. I would say that, you know, hopefully the Padua conference will happen in July 2021. And that this experiment that we've started would be presented there in a formal way, which would be a nice, what's the word, deadline or
I would prefer, Harry,
target.
my own personal preference would be that if we wanted to do a mock, we do one, and that we think of the series as a kind of a experiment in and of itself, an ongoing experiment that we will modify it as we go along. If we don't get interest, well, fine. But my own personal thing is I don't want to prepare. I think that the only way to do this and make it work is to put it out there and respond to the exigencies that occur as we move forward. I think that
I wouldn't doubt that.
much preparation will delay us, will stop us. But I do think you're right. We should have preparation. We should have a mock thing. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not worried if they don't come. They don't come. They don't come.
Well, I'm not. It's not the end of the world for me. Don't worry. I mean, it's just that we're putting quite a lot of effort into this, and we want it to work.
I think it's going to work, especially if we have a good. If we had a good overarching. I think we're going to make this work. If we have interesting themes, it's going to work.
Yeah.
Interesting themes and interesting outreach, it's going to work.
I think so.
Great.
There's certainly nothing else like it out there at the moment.
Yeah.
But Harry's right. There's all these little COVID things and all these little things that come up that are coming. We would be potentially, but not like this. You're right.
But if they're only responding to COVID and we're going beyond that, and we're setting up a process that will go beyond that, then that becomes irrelevant in a sense, because if we're setting up a tool that will actually run beyond COVID and is a response to changing need in response to COVID, then we don't box ourselves in.
Yes.
Anything that has a COVID-19 label also has a time limit.
Sure, sure.
We hope.
Harry wasn't interested in that so much. You didn't like that so much, Harry, right? To have it linked.
I'm interested. I'm pleased that people are wanting to do it, and it's just that it's not the first thing that grabs me. You know, I mean,
What's the first thing that grabs you?
well, probably in the philosophical area. But
What's the first thing that
I mean,
grabs
like we did that work on intersubjectivity at.
What's the first thing that grabs you as the theme of the meetups? We're calling it constructivist. Right now, we're calling it constructivist meetup series.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that the theme of the whole thing for you, or?
As long as it doesn't constrain us in any way, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
The constructivist meetup series can have broad application. It could have, I love this term, allied isms. It could really have tentacles and branch out.
Yeah,
Yes.
very interested in that.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
It's
again,
I guess there's a dimension that we want to be in the center of rather than at the edges, and the ends of the dimension are so specific a topic that it doesn't grab enough people.
I
And
think
at the
that's
other
our
end,
job.
sorry,
Sorry, Harry, I interrupted. Carry on.
I've got a specific topic, a narrow specific topic, you know, we might happen to be very interested in, but it isn't grabbing in the people. And at the other end, spreading yourself too thin and trying to save the world in every department.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need somewhere between, in the middle, where there's some, you know,
Constructivist meetup series may do that for you. Is that a middle thing for you?
Yeah.
say again.
Is constructivist meetup series?
I'm quite happy with that topic. It doesn't sound very nice, but it's acoustically not so good, but semantically is fine.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
There
poetry.
speaks the musician.
What if we sing it?
Oh, no.
We could even have a theme tune. I'll write one.
Great.
Sandy, what is your email?
Pardon?
What is your email?
Sandy Burbach @gmail.com. With an H. Bach. It's Bach. Yeah, @gmail.com.
Well connected
Okay.
to Johann Sebastian. I mean,
Jonathan's name is Jonathan Sebastian Burbach, and that was absolutely by accident. And I told a friend who fell about laughing and pointed it out. I'm not sure he's forgiven me.
Well, it's a little known fact, but Lewis's ancestors, they actually invented the first bottle. It's true.
Yeah, clearly. Desity's got an E, by the way, not an I.
I knew that.
Okay.
I know that. How is it? D-E-C-E?
E-T-I-T-Y, yeah.
Density.
Thank you.
how do you spell his full name? You said Gene, didn't you?
Gene, yes. I think it's actually, no, I think that's right.
Gene Vincent.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, we're at the end of our hour.
Okay.
Are we meeting next week?
Yes, if you want to.
I hope so. I think we should be meeting weekly until at least we get some momentum.
Okay.
All of you happy with that?
Do we have any homework?
I have.
I finished my classes, so I'm quite happy.
Are there any other matters arising at this point?
Not yet for me.
Lewis, are you comfortable with all of this with respect to the political issues that we were talking about before?
Absolutely.
Turf issues and all that stuff?
Absolutely. It's sounds good and exciting, and let's see if we can renew the field somehow.
That's great.
Brilliant. Well, I think it's been very good.
Mm-hmm.
Any final points?
Mike, do you want to pursue some of the ideas we started tossing around?
Yes, I'd love to. What's the best way to do that?
Maybe you should email me and we'll make a time or something like that.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Great.
So we have a little breakout group.
Mm-hmm.
Already, yes.
What is that, neuroconstructivism or?
I have no idea. What was it we were going to do? Something to do. Go back through your notes and tell me.
Oh, can you change Viv to VIV?
Oh yes, it's just one.
And
Which one should I get? Should I get rid of that one or that one?
well, are two electrons identical?
No, they're not. Somewhere in an alternative universe, you got rid of the other one, so we're all right.
Didn't we have another speaker on to go on there? Yeah, if you put the qualitative grid group on as D.
No, that comes up here.
Oh, I see. Where? Oh, yeah.
There.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
Lovely to
Thanks.
see you, and
Thank you.
I'm very
Take care.
pleased. Yeah.
See
So
you.
take care until next week.
Yes.
Same to you. Stay healthy.
Thanks. Yes, you too.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you. Lou.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Harry. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.